The air in the Fairfax, Virginia courtroom is a vacuum, sucking the oxygen out of the room, leaving only the stale scent of recycled air and palpable tension. It is a modern-day coliseum, a theater of scars, and at its epicenter sits a man the world believes it created and therefore has the right to destroy. Johnny Depp does not look like a movie star. He looks like a man who has been sleeping in his clothes for a decade, a weary mariner washed ashore. His gaze is distant, shielded by tinted glasses, but behind them he is watching a life. His life, being played back to him in distorted, grotesque fragments. Every text message, once a private whisper, is now a public scream. Every argument, once contained within four walls, has had its doors blown off for the world to peer inside. The beloved pirate, the whimsical chocolatier, the boy with scissors for hands, all those gentle, quirky souls he gave to the world have been summoned here to stand trial alongside him. He is a ghost haunting his own legacy. The world is not just watching, it is feasting. The dizzying stratospheric heights of fame have collapsed into this sterile, beige-colored pit, where love is dissected like a lab frog and a career worth billions hangs by the gossamer thread of public opinion. We see the ghost of a familiar smirk, but it's a reflex, a hollowed-out relic of a man who once commanded the world with his charm. Today, that charm is evidence for the prosecution. He is an artist stripped bare, his demons, addiction, rage, sorrow, laid out on a slab for global consumption. What really happened behind the gilded doors of that gothic Hollywood romance? A love story that curdled into a public war? And more importantly, when we strip away the characters, the accusations, and the noise, who is the man left sitting in that chair? His story does not begin in the blinding Klieg lights of Hollywood, but on the cracked asphalt of America's transient heartland. Born in Owensboro, Kentucky, John Christopher Depp II was a boy in perpetual motion. His family, led by his civil engineer father and his waitress mother, Betty Sue, were nomads, moving more than 20 times. This rootless existence bred in him a profound sense of otherness, a feeling of being a permanent outsider looking in. The household was a volatile cocktail of affection and abuse. Betty Sue was the sun and the storm of his world. He would later describe her with a painful paradox. The meanest human being I ever met in my life, and yet also his greatest inspiration. She was a woman who could throw an ashtray at his head one moment and fiercely defend his dreams the next. He wears her name tattooed on his arm, a permanent testament to the tangled, messy knot of love and trauma that defined him. When his parents' marriage finally shattered at 15, the boy retreated completely. He found his sanctuary not in people who had proven to be unreliable, but in the 6 strings of a cheap electric guitar. It became more than an escape. It was his first true language, a way to articulate the chaos swirling inside him. He dropped out of high school to chase the siren song of rock and roll with his band, The Kids, a name that perfectly captured his state of arrested development. He was an outcast by nature, a boy who learned early that the only home you could truly count on was the one you built yourself, through the sacred trinity of art, music, and loyalty to fellow outsiders. This search for a tribe would define his entire life, leading him to the men who would become his spiritual brothers. His pilgrimage to Los Angeles with the band was a fool's errand, ending in failure and desperation. He was surviving on odd jobs, including the soul-crushing work of a telemarketer, when fate, in the form of Nicolas Cage, intervened. Cage saw past the grunge and the mumbled words, recognizing a raw, cinematic quality in his friend's brooding charisma. The suggestion to try acting was a lifeline. His very first audition landed him a role in A Nightmare on Elm Street, and his iconic blood-gushing death became the stuff of horror legend. But the fame that followed was a prison. The TV series 21 Jump Street turned him into a teen idol, his face a commodity plastered on lunchboxes and magazine covers. He detested it. It was a betrayal of his outsider creed. He rebelled, getting tattoos, trashing his trailer, doing anything to break the perfect, profitable image that had been forced upon him. His first true artistic brother, Tim Burton, rescued him. Burton was a fellow outcast, a director who saw beauty in the grotesque and poetry in the strange. In Depp, he found his muse. Their first collaboration, Edward Scissorhands, was a silent scream of alienation. Depp, with barely any dialogue, channeled his own feelings of freakishness and longing into a character that was both monstrous and achingly gentle. It was more than a role. It was a confession. This partnership became his creative sanctuary, a place where his strangeness was not just accepted but celebrated. His second brother was a ghost he chased through the pages of a book, Hunter S. Thompson. Depp didn't just play the gonzo journalist in Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, he became his confidant, his friend, and his final executor. Thompson was not just a writer. He was a moral compass in a world of phonies, a philosopher armed with whiskey and wit. He taught Depp about integrity, about fighting the beast of conformity, and about living a life of pure, unadulterated truth, no matter how chaotic. When Thompson died, Depp fulfilled his final wish, spending millions to have his friend's ashes blasted from a cannon over his Colorado ranch. It was a gesture of profound love and a middle finger to convention. Pure Depp, pure Thompson. This brotherhood of outsiders, Burton the artistic visionary and Thompson the spiritual renegade, formed the bedrock of his identity, an identity that would soon be tested by a level of fame neither of them could have ever imagined. Long before a pirate swaggered into the global consciousness, Johnny Depp was quietly building one of the most eclectic and daring filmographies in Hollywood. He was an artist first, a movie star second, a distinction the industry often failed to grasp. In Burton's Ed Wood, he didn't just impersonate the notoriously terrible director. He inhabited his boundless, tragic optimism. He celebrated a man who was a failure in the eyes of the world, but a resounding success in his own heart. A theme that resonated deeply with Depp's own outsider sensibilities. He showed the world he could be a chameleon, disappearing completely into the role of an undercover FBI agent in Donnie Brasco, acting opposite the titan Al Pacino. Depp was a study in quiet intensity, his face a mask of conflict as he navigated the murky waters of loyalty and betrayal. It was a raw, naturalistic performance that proved his dramatic abilities were as sharp as his flair for the eccentric. Then came Finding Neverland, where he portrayed J.M. Barrie, the creator of Peter Pan. Here Depp peeled back all layers of oddity and revealed a core of profound, childlike innocence and deep melancholy. He captured the spirit of a man who refused to grow up, not out of immaturity but out of a desperate need to preserve wonder in a cynical world. His performance was gentle, heartbreaking, and earned him an Academy Award nomination. He could make you laugh, he could make you think, but here he proved he could shatter your heart. Even in a macabre musical like Sweeney Todd, another Burton collaboration, he wasn't just a monster. He was a tragic figure, his murderous rage born from unbearable loss. He did his own singing, a haunting baritone filled with pain, earning another Oscar nod and proving once again that there were no limits to his artistic ambition. These roles were not accidents, they were choices. They were the work of a true character actor, an artist fascinated by the fringes of society, by the broken, the misunderstood, and the beautifully strange. But Hollywood has a short memory. All of this was about to be overshadowed by a single character who would make him the biggest star on the planet, and in doing so begin to erase the very artist he had fought so hard to be. The pirate who stole the world was a happy accident, a rebellion that succeeded beyond anyone's wildest dreams. When Depp first presented his vision for Captain Jack Sparrow to Disney executives, they were paralyzed with fear. His creation, a flamboyant, Keith Richards-inspired, rum-soaked rock star of the high seas, was everything they hadn't asked for. "Is he drunk? Is he gay?" they nervously asked. They saw a caricature that would sink their blockbuster. Depp, holding fast to the spirit of Thompson and the freedom Burton had given him, trusted his instincts. He knew that pirates were the original rock stars, and he played Captain Jack as such. He created a character for the ages, a lovable, treacherous rogue who turned a theme park ride into a multi-billion-dollar cultural phenomenon. Suddenly, the eternal outsider was the king of the world. He became the highest-paid actor in Hollywood, a global brand unto himself. His life transformed into a fantasy of unimaginable proportions. He acquired a 45-acre private island in the Bahamas, a personal sanctuary where he could escape the ceaseless predatory gaze of the public. He owned a sprawling French chateau with his long-term partner, Vanessa Paradis, and their 2 children, Lily Rose and Jack. He lived a life that was, by all accounts, a dream. Yet the fame was a gilded cage. The man who played the freest character on screen was, in reality, a prisoner. He described his life as that of a fugitive, unable to perform the simplest tasks without causing a media frenzy. The more famous Captain Jack became, the more Johnny Depp disappeared, both from public view and, some might say, from himself. The loneliness of that pedestal was immense. He was surrounded by people, yet utterly alone. Then came the storm. His long, stable relationship with Vanessa Paradis ended, and he fell into a whirlwind, passionate, and fiercely intense romance with his Rum Diary co-star, Amber Heard. Their love was a bonfire, dazzling, hot, and destined to burn out. They married on his private island in 2015. 15 months later, the dream imploded. Heard filed for divorce and appeared in court with a bruised face, alleging a history of horrifying abuse. The world was stunned. The image of the gentle bohemian artist was instantly and violently shattered. The battle that followed was brutal, a war fought in headlines and leaks, but the definitive blow came in 2020. After Depp sued the British tabloid The Sun for calling him a wife-beater, a UK High Court judge delivered a devastating verdict, finding the allegations to be substantially true. The fallout was apocalyptic. He was no longer just an actor. He was a pariah. Let's imagine that night. The news breaks. He is alone in a sprawling, silent hotel suite somewhere in London. The city's lights glitter outside, indifferent. On a giant television screen, his own face stares back at him, next to words like wife-beater and disgraced. The phone, which once never stopped ringing, is silent. The voices of his allies have gone quiet. In that crushing solitude, the weight of the verdict lands. It's not just a legal loss, it's a public branding. A life's work, a carefully built legacy of beloved misfits and gentle souls, is incinerated in a single headline. In this deafening silence, a question must have echoed. How did I get here? Is any of this my fault? It's a moment of quiet internal climax. The hero of the story, now the villain, utterly and completely alone with nothing but the reflection of a broken man for company. Hollywood, an industry built on image and terrified of liability, reacted with ruthless efficiency. Warner Brothers swiftly asked him to resign from the Fantastic Beasts franchise. The Disney kingdom he had built slammed its iron gates shut. The future of Captain Jack Sparrow, his alter ego, was dead in the water. Producers who once clamored for him now wouldn't return his calls. Projects vanished. Insurance companies deemed him unbondable. This wasn't just a trial by media. It was a practical, professional excommunication. He was an island cut off from the continent he had once ruled. But the story does not end in that dark, silent London suite. For a man who had built a career on playing resilient outsiders, surrender was not an option. He chose another battlefield, one on his home turf, Fairfax, Virginia. It was a move of shocking audacity, a multi-million-dollar gamble to sue Amber Heard herself for defamation. He was doubling down on his own truth. The trial that followed was not just a legal proceeding. It was global theater, a raw, unfiltered, and deeply uncomfortable look into the abyss of a toxic relationship. Broadcast live, it became a cultural obsession. For 6 weeks, the world watched as Johnny Depp took the stand, not as a charismatic movie star, but as a slow-talking, wounded man, his voice a low southern murmur. He spoke of his abusive mother, of his own struggles with addiction, of a marriage that he claimed was a labyrinth of psychological warfare. And this time, he was not entirely alone. While the powerful machinery of Hollywood remained silent, voices from his past emerged to paint a different portrait of the man. His former partner of 14 years and the mother of his children, Vanessa Paradis, had previously submitted a declaration in his defense, her words a powerful counter-narrative. This is nothing like the true Johnny I have known, and from my personal experience of many years I can say he was never violent or abusive to me. Penelope Cruz, his co-star and friend, echoed the sentiment, speaking of his unique kindness and generosity. Paul Bettany, whose private texts were weaponized in the trial, stood by his friend, lamenting the public pillorying of a man he knew to be gentle and shy. These voices were whispers against a hurricane of public accusation, but for the millions watching, they mattered. They suggested there was another Johnny Depp, one hidden beneath the monstrous caricature that had been created. The trial became a phenomenon, an army of online sleuths, mostly women, mobilized in his defense, dissecting every piece of evidence, turning his courtroom mannerisms into viral TikToks, and championing the hashtag #Justice for Johnny Depp. They saw in him not a wife-beater, but a victim of abuse himself. A man who had finally found the courage to speak. When the verdict was read, it was a seismic shock. The jury found overwhelmingly in his favor, affirming that Amber Heard had defamed him with actual malice. The camera captured his lawyers weeping in relief. For Depp, it was more than a legal victory, it was a public resurrection. He had gambled everything and against all odds had seemingly won back his name. But what does one do after a war that has been broadcast to the entire world? You don't return to the battlefield. You seek peace. Let's imagine a journalist finds him not in Hollywood, but in the quiet green heart of Somerset, England. The air here doesn't smell of exhaust and desperation. It smells of damp earth and wood smoke. He is living in a sprawling 850-acre estate, a man in self-imposed gentle exile. In this imagined interview, he is not triumphant, he is contemplative. Happiness? He might muse, looking out over his land. It's quiet. It's the ability to walk into a small town and have a conversation with an old man in a pub, and for him to see me, not him, not the pirate. The conversation would inevitably turn to the cost of his war, especially on his children. The pain of seeing his daughter, Lily Rose, a young woman forging her own path, have to endure the relentless public shame must have been a private agony. He might say, to be a father is to be a protector. And for years I couldn't protect them from the noise. The greatest victory of that trial wasn't for me. It was the hope that one day my children and their children would know that I told the truth. He finds his solace now not on a film set, but in his art studio. His hands stained with paint, or in a recording studio, his fingers finding familiar comfort on the fretboard of a guitar. He has reconnected with his third spiritual brother, the one who was there for him in the darkest days. The late, legendary guitarist Jeff Beck. Their collaboration, a joint album and tour, was more than a side project. It was therapy. On stage, with a guitar in his hands, Depp could finally speak a language that couldn't be twisted or cross-examined. It was a return to his first love, a healing pilgrimage in the key of blues. Imagine for a moment another scene that never happened, a piece of cinematic fiction. His daughter, Lily Rose, now a woman who has weathered her own public storms, sits down to write a letter she may never send. "Dad," it begins, "I spent years being angry. Angry at you, at her, at the world for making our private pain a public spectacle. I watched them try to erase you, and in doing so, try to erase a part of me. But I've learned that you cannot be erased. You are too strange, too loud in your quietness, too much your own creation. I used to think your chaos was your weakness. I now understand it is the source of your art. The world wanted you to be simple, a hero or a villain. But you were never simple. You are a poem that doesn't rhyme, and I am finally learning to love the music in that. It is a fantasy of forgiveness, a quiet grace note in a story defined by noise. And what of the pirate? Does he still exist? Perhaps in a final symbolic image we see Depp in his studio late at night. He absent-mindedly twists a silver skull ring on his finger, a piece of pirate memorabilia he has kept. The ring is no longer just a prop. It is a vessel of memory. In its polished surface, he can see the wild, joyful glint of Captain Jack's eye, the freedom that character gave him. It holds the warmth of his years with Vanessa in France, the birth of his children. It holds the cold, metallic glint of the courtroom, the flash of cameras, the madness of the past decade. And it holds the enduring spark of his own defiant, artistic soul. It is a symbol of everything he has won, everything he has lost, and everything he has managed to keep. So where does he fit in the pantheon of fallen Hollywood idols? His case is unique. Mel Gibson, after his own public immolation, found a path back through a combination of penance and undeniable talent as a director. Kevin Spacey, however, remains in a state of permanent exile, his art now inseparable from his alleged crimes. Depp exists in a strange purgatory between them. He did not apologize, he fought back. He didn't ask for forgiveness, he demanded vindication. And he got it. But is a legal victory the same as redemption? This leads to the uncomfortable question we must ask ourselves. Did we, the public and the industry, punish Johnny Depp too soon? Before the evidence was fully heard, before the nuances were understood, a man's career was dismantled. We were quick to believe the worst, perhaps because it fit a convenient narrative. But his body of work cries out with a different story. The story of a gentle, misunderstood artist who championed the underdog because he always felt like one himself. And can redemption happen in silence? In an age that demands public apologies and tearful confessions, Depp has chosen a different path. He has not gone on an apology tour. He has not written a tell-all book. He has withdrawn. He has let his art and his music speak for him. His redemption, if it is to happen, is taking place in the quiet of his English estate, in the communion with his canvases and his guitars. It is a private act of reconstruction, far from the prying eyes that nearly consumed him. This is why Hollywood needs another Johnny Depp, but will likely never have one. He is a relic from another era, a true original in a world of copies. He is a risk-taker, a commercially viable artist who consistently chose the strange over the safe. He built his kingdom on eccentricity and vulnerability, and it made him a global icon. The industry today is too risk-averse, too corporate, too sanitized to produce another star of his strange and singular magnitude. And so, the final image of Johnny Depp is not one of a movie star plotting his next blockbuster. It is the image of an artist, finally free. The pirate has returned home not to the sea but to the wood of his guitar and the dust of his pigments, leaving a void in the map of modern cinema that is shaped exactly like him.